Enrique Tarrio, leader of the Proud Boys, sentenced to 22 years in prison for seditious conspiracy. Seditious conspiracy. Anybody buying any of this crap? And the media, have you noticed this? They're having a really bad case of amnesia. They're forgetting what happened back in 2020, what happened back in 2016. So I have an article for you here at The Atlantic, a really good example of this. This is by David A. Graham. The former Proud Boys leader finds out. Enrique Tarrio was sentenced to 22 years in prison on charges related to January 6th. Goes on to say here, say this for the Proud Boys, they abide by their own creed. F around, find out. Members of the group with Joseph Biggs in front chanted this as they marched down the National Mall in Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021, the day of the insurrection. Well, it was an insurrection. It was a whole bunch of goons that got out of hand. And there wasn't enough security to handle the crowd. That's what happened. Over the past week, they found out. Enrique Tarrio, the group's former chairman, was sentenced today to, they're repeating themselves here, 22 years in prison. They just love the fact that he was sentenced to 22 years in prison. The longest sentence for any of these people, okay? On charges of seditious conspiracy, Tarrio, who was not physically present at the riot, this is key now. Tarrio, who was not physically present at the riot after being kicked out of Washington the day before. So why was he being tried in Washington, D.C. if he wasn't there? Was convicted back in May. It's the longest January 6 related sentence yet and follows a series of long sentences announced last week for other Proud Boys, including 17 years for Joseph Biggs, 18 for Ethan Nordine, 15 for Zachary Ryle, all of whom were found guilty of seditious conspiracy. Seditious conspiracy! Ooh, baby! And 10 years for Dominic Pizzola, who was acquitted of sedition but convicted of 6 other felonies. And I'll tell you what I think. I think a lot of these charges are trumped up. And you wait and see, folks. You wait and see. It's going to come out that either the judge was biased in this case, there could have been some jury tampering, I don't know, maybe somebody got paid off somewhere to trump up these charges. You wait, you watch. It's going to happen. Heard it first on this channel. In May, Stuart Rhodes was sentenced to 18 years for sedition. They just love that word, sedition. In his capacity as head of the Oath Keepers, another group involved in the insurrection. Well, it wasn't an insurrection. It was just a bunch of goons that got out of hand. You didn't have enough security to handle it. Even though Trump had asked for additional security, but Nancy Pelosi turned him down. Seeing these long sentences levied now, more than 2.5 years after the insurrection, is heartening. They're gloating here. They're gloating over this. But notice, no mention of what happened back in 2020 with all these riots, the looting. They were burning down the courthouse, where, in Portland? Or was it Seattle? I can't remember. Somewhere on the West Coast. Hundreds of people have been sentenced for violence and more minor offenses committed at the Capitol, but the Proud Boys' sentences, along with Rhodes, are more important because they punish not just spontaneous violence, but also a concerted, planned attack on the government. Who attacked the government? Who exactly in the government was attacked? Now, you can make the argument that you have police officers who got into these fistfights with these idiots, and I don't condone that violence whatsoever. And people were smashing windows at the Capitol. Well, they should be punished. They should be sentenced. Absolutely. Hey, you can protest without having to be violent about it. I'm getting back to the article. The convictions and stiff sentences are a message about what the United States will tolerate. Well, wait a minute. First of all, our government works for us. Our taxes pay their salary. Now, that doesn't mean that people can go out and do whatever they want and wreak havoc, as they did in 2020, or as they did at the Capitol building. But these people in the government, they work for us. And we have a constitutional right, whether the issue is an election, no matter what the year is, whether it's legislation being passed in our district where we live, We have every right to protest that because our taxes pay their salary. They work for us. But somehow the Atlantic doesn't get that. Juries have proved willing to convict even though the charges in question are rare and even though the likely sentences are strong. So aren't you asking the question, why are these charges rare? I mean, if the Proud Boys were such a threat, let's say back in 2017 with Charlottesville, why didn't you go after them then? I'll tell you why you didn't go after them then. Because it made good for good TV. That's why you didn't go after them. Did you get the words out today? I'm starting to sound like Joe Biden. They also show that juries and judges, and not just prosecutors, are unwilling to treat the insurrection the way too many Republican elected officials have, as just a rally that got a little out of hand. Well, what do you call 2020? These riots, the looting in 2020, what do you call that, Mr. Graham? Oh, that's just protest. You know, because Trump's a Nazi. Trump's a Nazi? I'm of German heritage. And trust me, Trump is not a Nazi. I didn't vote for Trump, but he is not a Nazi. Political scientists, pardon me, call laws that defend democratic institutions from authoritarian threats in the enforcement. Hey, it's really hard to do these videos and not keep your throat cleared, okay? You just get so excited you just don't know what to say in these videos and you're pressed for time because YouTube only gives you about 15 minutes per video. I'm just having fun today, folks. Another one-take video. It is what it is, okay? Hey, we got 100 check-ins at work tonight. Like I said, I can't talk. I'm starting to sound like Joe Biden. American laws against seditious conspiracy. And do you know what sedition is, Mr. Graham? Sedition is trying to use some type of method to overthrow the government or halt the government in some way. Well, let's take a step back here. The government still was able to have the Electoral College vote. You quashed this quote-unquote insurrection, this rebellion. Joe Biden's in office. We still have Republicans and Democrats. These officials fight with each other in Congress as they do every day. So the U.S. government isn't in disarray. It isn't in shambles. It's still working. It's still functioning. Although it could function better, but it's still functioning. It's still there. We still have a Capitol building. I swear, these people live in La La Land. And against advocating for overthrowing the government, our quintessential defense democracy. Michael Singer wrote in The Atlantic earlier this year, well, we don't live in a democracy. This is a constitutional or federal republic. Now, it gets better, folks. It gets better in this article. They're going to compare this to the Confederacy. I kid you not. The Proud Boys leaders have received serious hard time sentences, not slaps on the wrist. Because how dare you protest an election? How dare you exercise your First Amendment right? How dare you question us, even though your taxes are paying our salary? This is true, even though the prison terms are short of both the federal guidelines and what prosecutors requested. 33 years for Tarrio and Biggs, 30 for Riley. So, you're gloating over the fact that Enrique Tarrio and these other people from the Proud Boys, pardon me, you're gloating over the fact that they got these prison sentences, but you're not happy with the length of these prison sentences. Well, which is it? Such sentences would verge on draconian given the crimes involved. The conspiracy was dangerous and appalling, but also feckless and obviously doomed. For comparison, here we go, folks. For comparison, Confederate President Jefferson Davis was jailed for 2 years before being released without trial. What exactly did Jefferson Davis do that was against the Constitution? Because, Mr. Graham, I'm going to give you a little history lesson here. When these states seceded from the Union, this Union of free and independent states, as was declared in the Declaration of Independence, as was understood at the Constitutional Convention in 1787, whenever they had their Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, these states had the right to leave the Union at any time they wanted. And they were talking about secession back in the 1790s, in the halls of Congress in 1794, in 1815 during the Hartford Convention. They were floating about this idea of secession. You had Northerners who were calling for secession. William Lloyd Garrison in 1859. 1859. In the 1840s, they were calling for secession. In the North, not in the South, in the North. By the way, I just want to slip this in here. Did you see that story about what happened on Martha's Vineyard? Apparently one of these white supremacist groups, these white nationalist groups, they've been putting up posters in Martha's Vineyard. These quote-unquote racist white nationalist posters. Wait a minute, I thought that all happened in the South. Just thought I'd, throw that in there. Now, getting back to the article and the BS in this article, but I was going to say, these states in the Confederacy, they first voted in their state legislature to secede, then they seceded. At the point that they seceded, they were no longer part of the United States. They had not engaged in insurrection. They had not caused some type of rebellion. They were not engaging in rebellion. They seceded after this vote in the state legislature. Then they joined the CSA and became a new nation, the Confederate States of America. And originally, we were a confederation. Actually, we've always been a confederation of states. And it's true, even if the men don't end up serving the full terms, as is common, though their unrepentant attitudes suggest that they're banking on pardons from a restored President Donald Trump, not earlier releases. Notably for the purposes of a sentence, and I can't read this anymore. I just can't. It's just a bunch of gobbledygook. So let me see if I've got something else in here I can give you. No, it's all crap. It's all crap. These are positive indications about the strength of American defensive democracy. Again, we are a federal republic, constitutional republic, federal republic. But they are not the final answer. Another test will come in the trials of the many people involved in what I call the paperwork coup. The series of extra-legal, though often lawyerly, attempts to subvert the 2020 election. Who subverted the 2020 election? Trump felt in his mind that he had won the election, and he was using the legal means necessary that were provided for him under the Constitution to protest the results of the election if he felt that he was wronged in that election. It's part of the First Amendment. It's part of the electoral process. Yes, it's ugly. Yes, it's divisive. But that's the way the founders designed it, because they understood that we have different interests, different areas of this thing called the United States that have different traditions, beliefs. So not to go too long in the video here, story at The Atlantic by David A. Graham, gloating over the fact that Enrique Tarrio, the prize, aren't the Hispanics the prize now? The prize has been sentenced to 22 years in prison on charges related to January 6th, seditious conspiracy. The former Proud Boys leader finds out. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you know what to do. You can also follow me at Instagram, #JasonComposes, because I write music in my spare time. Or you can go to the new X, formerly Twitter, Culture Confederacy, at CultureConfed1 on X. This is the Culture Confederacy saying peace out, stay safe, everybody. God bless this thing called the United States. And you know how we do it here. This is where the past crashes with the present. I'll catch you next time. And y'all have a great Wednesday afternoon.